All right, here we are. Okay, so thanks for being here. The reason that I'm doing these interviews, I'm actually doing them because we have all been talking. I feel like the next question that we're all asking ourselves right now is, what does the future hold for all of us, like as people or in our industries and so on? And I think that we sometimes forget that we are actually the ones who decide what the future will hold as well. And I think the only way that we can begin to figure that out, at least when it comes to our individual level of work, we can't decide what the government will do right now, but we have a voice. And the only way we can start to really have a constructive conversation about what the future will hold is by talking to each other out loud. So I wanted to gather different leaders of different industries and communities and ask them all the same question. Which I will come to in a minute, but basically about the future, the post-pandemic future. And no one can predict the future, obviously, but if we don't start having this sort of cross-industry conversation, then we're just kind of waiting to find out through word of mouth or perhaps within our own limited sectors. And I think there's value to hearing one another. So I'm starting with the restaurant industry because I'm thinking on a very personal level. What are some of the first things most of us would like to do? For me, when I come out, one of the joys for me is to go out to dinner with my friends. And when I think of that, I also, what kind of place would I want to be? And Grumman is high on that list because of the energy and the atmosphere and just the food and that terrace and, your whole world. So I thought I'd reach out to you guys. And also I've seen that you've done a lot to keep Grumman going. So I know that you've done a lot of thinking. I wanted as well to basically ask you a little bit about what the experience for Grumman has been. Because I've been reading some data. I was reading, I think, about Restaurant Canada. Just let me figure it out. So yeah, Restaurant Canada had a survey that said that at the end of March, 10% of restaurants in Canada had closed permanently. And that by the end of April, they had been expecting that 18% would close. And this is in an industry that normally employs like 1.2 million people, makes $93 billion or generates $93 billion in economic activity and serves 22 million people a day. So my first question to you then is, tell us a little bit about Grumman and how has this impacted you?
Where to start? We were impacted in that we had to shut down the dining room immediately, and we had to lay off about 90% of the staff right away. We had to do it fast so that they were able to receive benefits and sort of move on with their lives, but also so that, frankly, we could get them off the payroll, because profit margins are so slim in a restaurant industry to begin with that to be paying people when there's no one coming out to eat because there's a pandemic and a lockdown in effect is financial suicide. So a lot of restaurants closed before the order even came down. We could see that the environment was shifting, the attitudes were shifting, tensions were mounting. It did not feel safe or responsible to be a meeting place for people to gather.
When did you decide to close? What day? Do you remember?
I think the last service we were open for was on the 16th of March.
Okay, so right in the beginning.
Which was the Monday. And then I believe that, there were so many directives that came down every day saying that dining rooms could operate, but at half capacity. And a lot of people, at least in my immediate restaurant world, just said, we're going to shut it down immediately. This does not feel responsible. This is the right thing to do. And so what happened in that zone is there was this weird restaurants who were open, restaurants who were closed, and then sort of a weird tension between the two. Restaurants would announce on Instagram or on Facebook that they were closing, and the restaurants who had closed would chime in saying, you're doing the right thing, way to go. And so I think those of us who remained open thought, well, are we de facto doing the wrong thing? Is this a socially irresponsible thing to do? But it was such a gray zone. So one of the once we did decide to close the dining room, before the directive was even laid down, we were just very uneasy. We didn't want to put the staff in those uncomfortable situations. Going to a table and talking to clients, filling their wine glasses, clearing their plates, it's a very personal thing to do. You are touching things that people's mouths have been on. You're in close proximity. The restaurants are noisy. You can't stand 6 feet away from them. And so we were very much concerned about the health and safety of our staff, and we didn't want anyone to come to work if they were feeling uneasy. It's a hard enough job without feeling like your life is in danger. So
yeah, I can only imagine. Do you have any idea in terms of like numbers? What would your sort of, if I may, and if you're not comfortable, that's fine. But how would this compare in terms of a loss, like your profits in a normal March, April?
Well, I mean, I don't have any profits in March. My business is extremely seasonal. Most restaurants are. I mean, we're coming off the worst quarter in the restaurant industry. January, February, March, most restaurants lose money. We do. We always emerge in springtime very much in the red. And then we have a booming summer where we do tons of events. The taco truck goes out, everyone gets married. We do anniversary parties, birthday parties. The terrace is open, the garage doors are open. And we do a brisk business during the summertime, but we're not able to recoup those losses that we had in the first quarter. So, I mean, if anything, shutting down the restaurant helped me in that I was already losing money.
And how is tell us a little bit about your current model. How have you guys adapted?
So we've pivoted to takeout. What we decided right away was that we didn't want to serve hot food. We wanted to serve, the idea is to serve comfort dishes, regular food, home cooking at home. We're not trying to do high-end restaurant food. We're not trying to mimic a restaurant experience. What we're trying to do is, the meal prep that you ideally want to be doing every Sunday so that you have beautiful, healthy things to eat all week. We do that for you. So we're sort of like a prepared food / épicerie / caviste at the moment. So the idea is we have, 5 or 6 dishes, some meals, some sides. We have an épicerie section. So for example, in Quebec at the moment, snow crab and Nordic shrimps are in season. And so we bring that in, we mark it up just a little bit to help cover some of our costs. And then we sell some sides that you could have with that, like garlic mayo, for example, which is delicious with snow crab and crevettes de matin. So we're serving that. And if you're serving hot food, you have an infinitesimal window where the food is delicious. And it's inconvenient for the client to have to say, okay, well, I want to eat at 6, so I better make sure that I have the food picked up by 5:30, and then I need to rush home, and then it's never going to be as it should. So you wind up selling a product that's about 50% as good as it would be in the restaurant for usually the same price. So that puts you in a hard place. It damages the quality of your food, and the client doesn't have a pleasurable experience either.
I think it's incredibly enlightening and important for us consumers to understand and remember how strategic your thinking is. In normal times, a restaurant is playing a chess game with ingredients and not wasting, and as you say, with very small profit margins. And just to see the impact it's had on restaurants, and watching Grumman actually evolve, and almost, regularly you guys are bringing in new things. I think you're doing fresh flowers, you have baskets of fresh vegetables and so on. So it's quite fascinating to see. So my next question, who do you think, in the restaurant world, I imagine that you talk to one another. Who have you seen has been hit hardest, or hasn't been able to pivot in this way? Like, what do you think made it possible for Grumman to be a restaurant that understood how to adapt?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have a colossal space. So we are really able to keep the social distancing in effect. We have a great area sort of in which to flow. So our kitchen is entirely in the back of the restaurant. So the cooks are in there. So there's no need for them to come through the front door. They even come through the back door when they come to work. We have our enormous pallet tables in the restaurant. So we put them 2 or 3 deep so that the customer does not have to come in. We keep the menu outside with a hand sanitizing station and signs everywhere that say that you must be 2 meters apart. We only allow one customer in the restaurant at a time. In order to maintain as little interaction as possible, we launched an online ordering platform with our friends who run an app called Check Please, an app that allows you to pay for your meal from your phone. They contacted us at the beginning of the pandemic. How can we help? They built us the online ordering platform, which means that we really do have contactless. So the client goes online, orders their food, orders their wine, pays. We get everything together. We put them in the fridge with the order number. So the customer just comes in and says, I'm order number XYZ. We go get it. And then we fashioned like a tray where we can pass the food without having to touch anyone. Also, if a client does not want to order online, they may come in. We ordered a new TPV system, which is the interface that for debit cards and MasterCard. We ordered one where there's 2 terminals, with a 6-foot wire. So we input it on our end, and then the customer is able to do it on their end. So we're not entering it and passing it to them and then doing it and passing it to us. So on our end, our terminal never gets touched, and on the client's end, we wipe it down after each go.
It's fascinating also because as you're speaking, it's making me think about this incredible gap in terms of technological understanding. What you're actually saying is you knew which questions to ask. You might not have known at the beginning of this what to do exactly, but you've adapted to new technologies. And I think of the mom and pop restaurants, or the sort of perhaps more like in Park Extension and so on, places where perhaps they don't know these things, and it makes or breaks in some sense. Would you say that it makes or breaks the ability of a restaurant to survive?
Absolutely. I mean, you must have a strong online presence. I think people are feeling panicky. I think you need to make it as simple as possible so that people can have the products that they need. I see so many, posts from restaurants where they tell you, we're open, but there's no link to a menu, there's no prices, there's no pictures of any food. It's sort of like, if you know, you know, but most people don't know. And I think why we were able to pivot successfully at Grumman is that and on top of being restaurateurs, we are also lovers of food and restaurants. So we are a client as much as we are a restaurateur. So you're able to look at it from both angles. We talk about this at the restaurant all the time. Expérience client. When a client comes in, how do they want to be received? Would they like someone to smile at them and welcome them? And these are just little things that go a long way in a customer's joyful experience of being in your restaurant. And the same can be applied to takeout. It's not just an emergency plan. In many ways, it's a more successful business model.
So that was actually my next question. If you could have given yourself one piece of advice 6 weeks ago, what would it have been? What do you wish you'd known then? If anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that we are in it for much longer than we had anticipated. I think if I hadn't started takeout right away, I might have said to myself, you should have started this right away because they're not opening dining rooms anytime soon. What do I wish I would have known?
And it can also be on a personal level, because I can only imagine the stress. How has that been for you guys? I know there's you and Gail and
Seb and our cooks, and Sam and Julien were running the front of house with Gail. When the pandemic first hit, I had come back from Kenya 3 days earlier. So I had to go into a lockdown right away. And so we had we really had a philosophical question on our hands here. It wasn't a business question. It was, what are the merits of staying open? Are you keeping your dining room? Are you keeping the business open to keep the business alive? Because at the time, there was sort of this feeling that the government was going to come in and pay your rent and give you money and they would save the restaurants at any cost. But I think that we're seeing that that's not possible, and things are going to be a lot more cutthroat, and we're going to see a lot more restaurants falling by the wayside on a daily basis. because there are some rent relief in place, but I haven't seen it yet. There's a salary subsidy in place. I qualify for it, but I can't get access to it at the moment. And so I think the bottom line is no one is coming to save you. You must save yourself. I know this from personal experience, and I'm seeing it very clearly in the restaurant experience. So when it first came down, the question was, are we going to stay open? And if so, why? If it's going to be staying open primarily for financial reasons, that doesn't make any sense to me. Are we staying open to make money? I don't feel comfortable taking advantage of people during a pandemic so that I can have higher profit margins. I was not able to go in and work, so it really fell to my partners. If you guys want to do this, then please go ahead and do so. Do not make anyone work who doesn't want to. There were a ton of employees at other restaurants saying that they felt unsafe, but that they had to come in and work because they needed money to pay their rent and pay their bills. These are all very realistic scenarios for the majority of the working world. I think at Grumman, what we came to realize was, no one was going to save us, so we had to save ourselves, but we weren't going to make a ton of money doing it. We weren't going to be those people who hoard sanitizer and toilet paper and then gouge people to make
taco
money.
Shells.
Yeah, exactly. The reality is that what we feel is that we're providing a service to the community. I think that people come in, they are extremely happy to have some level of normalcy. You know, there's a ton of people out there saying, well, why can't people just cook at home? A lot of people do not know how to cook. And a lot of people are working full time and they have their children at home, or they have aging and sick parents, or they've lost their jobs, or XYZ. There's a myriad of reasons why someone needs someone else to make them a lasagna. And if I can make it in an affordable, safe way where people are not taken advantage of and where they are taken care of in a kind fashion, I would be happy to do so. But because I'm not on the front lines, I have to rely on my coworkers and my staff, who is not forced whatsoever to be there to do so.
I love that. I think you've touched on a very important point as well in terms of, why should restaurants stay open? Is this just for people who are lazy and who have so much excess income that they feel like spending? But you bring up an excellent point that we do not know how other people are living it. And even the so-called lucky ones who still have jobs and so on, it doesn't mean that it's easy for them and that they have a lot of time. And I personally have a lot of friends going through that who are still working, but they also have children and a massive set of responsibilities to juggle. So
maybe they want some sense of normalcy, just one tiny moment of the day that feels
like a treat too.
Treat, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been, I didn't order in for a while just because I was taking the lay of the land. Mm-hmm. And we've only ordered once or twice, mainly because I don't know why actually, I've just bought so much food. Like, okay, cook, woman. And I'm not, I'm figuring out, I was launching this consulting business when this happened. And then I had to sit down and think, well, what is it relevant to ask, anyway, I won't get into it, but to ask companies to do better with their corporate budgets and help communities. And at the beginning, I thought that wasn't relevant. And now I realize it's become incredibly pertinent to this moment. So I have two really, the two questions that I'm very, very curious to hear your answers to. So the first one is, how do you think that this pandemic will affect the restaurant industry as a whole? I'm not asking you, I know you can't predict the future, but just based on what you've seen and what you're seeing in terms of trends, and you can choose the timeline, like how do you think it will affect things in the longer run for the restaurant industry?
Well, I think you're going to see a rash of restaurants closing. Montreal had reached a tipping point of too many restaurants, I'd say a couple of years ago. We saw it at Grumman in that we were not as busy. There was too much choice. It was the client could eat wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and have excellent food across the board, excellent food and service and thoughtful wine choices. Montreal as a city has just been totally overrun, and it's part of our cultural identity, but to be a restaurateur in that place that is really a diner's market is extremely challenging. So I think the first thing that we're going to see is a lot of restaurants are going to fall by the wayside. A bit of a natural selection, unfortunately. You know, nature is cutthroat, and I think that you're going to see some of that in the restaurant business. I think that on another level, people are enjoying the slowdown. I know that I speak personally when I say this. People are enjoying purchasing food, reading recipes, and cooking food either by themselves, taking care of themselves, doing it with their families. And I think we've been fed these lies that you don't have time to shop, you need a 15-minute dinner, everything needs to be convenient, you need to buy the pre-chopped stir-fried vegetables in order to have a healthy dinner, because there's just no time. And I think that a lot of people are calling bullshit on that. There is time to take care of me. And restaurants are wonderful places, but I think that we ended up relying too heavily on them. And I speak for myself as well, who dined out constantly. And I'm seeing that I go to the grocery store once a week. I make a detailed menu of what I'm going to be eating during the week. And I cook food, and I enjoy doing so. So I think that people are going to see that, hey, I can do this. I can cook at home. I am enjoying it. It's a way of nurturing yourself. And I think the other reality is that people will not have as much disposable income to be eating out at restaurants. A lot of people have been laid off. Those who are self-employed, or those who are keeping their, or have been able to keep their jobs, do not have as much disposable income as they did before. And eating out at a restaurant is a real luxury. With the abundance of grocery stores, there's really no good reason why people should be eating out at restaurants. In a city like New York, where a lot of apartments do not have kitchens, it makes a lot more sense to be eating out at the restaurant, or even at the deli or the bodega, to go pick up, a salad or sandwiches, etc. I mean, the choices in New York are astronomical. But in a city like Montreal, where people are able to cook at home, we do have wonderful, beautiful products in the markets and in the grocery stores. So I think people are going to find that they can do it. I think what we will see is the fine dining restaurants will have a harder time. Those with the $200, $250, $300 a head plates, I mean, those restaurants aren't making much money either, because in order to charge someone that much, you have to spend a lot of money to do so. You need beautiful cutlery, you need beautiful glasses, you must have an expensive laundry service, you have to have beautiful tablecloths, the servers must have beautifully starched uniforms, So there's a cost that goes with everything, and once you start adding everything up, it doesn't make any sense.
So that's seeing a lot of closings, a return to home cooking, and perhaps a shifting down in terms of the restaurants that do survive it. We might see a more casual and a bit of an more approachable price point.
I think so.
The ones that stay.
Josh had something else to say. Oh, well, yeah, and the talk is, I mean, the restaurants will probably be one of the last businesses to really go back to normal, if there ever is a go back to normal, because it's such a personal, intimate thing. It's being in a room and having someone clean up after things that your mouths have been on.
Yeah.
That's a very personal thing. And so there's talk about restaurants opening at 25% capacity, and that is totally unsustainable. Mm-hmm. But I think more than that, we may get the directive that that dining rooms are allowed to open, but I don't think customers are going to want to be going back to restaurants, especially in Montreal. I mean, maybe in more conservative places like the US, where you see they're protesting the stay-at-home orders and they want to go out. These people will go to restaurants, but I think Montrealers are more cautious. Maybe not so on sunny days like I saw this weekend.
Yeah.
But I think that most everyone that I've spoken to is not all that keen to get back into a restaurant. I miss restaurants. I miss that, the energy, like you were saying, the intimacy of the room, the music, the being mm-hmm. near people, breaking bread together. These are all beautiful things, but I don't think we're going to be seeing anything like that for a very long time.
I think also what you said is important as a consumer. Will not only be evaluating, so what can our budget handle? What do I feel like eating? But I can think for myself, and as I evaluate, if I do go back to a restaurant, I'll be as interested in their menu as I am in the way they've decided to lay out the experience and the way they've decided to present it. And that includes everything from what you said about, are they actually smiling? Are they here? Like, what is the experience? Because actually, I think the smaller things will matter even more. So even if so much it happens electronically, it's the fact that when you come in, someone does take the time to say hi and smile. And then it's, how is the layout? Because if anything about that layout makes one uncomfortable, then you're not going to go back. Just the way that in the past, you wouldn't go back because the music was always really loud, or they have these strange spotlights and it feels, these things will become, I think, more important. So my next question is a similar one, but it's actually a bit more personal, is how do you hope that this pandemic will change your industry, if at all?
One of the things that we've been able to do at Grumman that I'm really proud of is we've managed to eliminate the front of house and the back of house wage disparity. So this is a story that's as old as time with regards to the restaurant business, is that the cooks work 12 hours a day for close to minimum wage. In my experience, less than minimum wage when I worked as a cook. And the front of house comes in, they work a fraction of the hours, and they make triple or quadruple the amount of cash.
Yeah.
So at Grumman, what we do is everyone, front of house, back of house, gets paid a flat rate. They all make the same thing, and it's not minimum wage, and we split the tips evenly. So on my last payroll, my cooks and my servers were all making $25 an hour, which is thanks to the generosity of the people who are leaving tips. And it's wonderful to be able to take those tips and to spread them out equally around everyone. And that I'm really, really proud of.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful change to see. And I've been a waitress, so I know those days. I was a terrible waitress, but it's still, you got good tips. And then the busboy, the rest of them it was a downward scale.
Yeah, and that busboy is doing really hard, dirty, back-breaking work.
Yeah.
It's harder than being a server.
Yeah.
I think.
That's a beautiful change. So you're saying that you'd like to see that kind of inclusion and equality across the board?
I would. I also think, I think a lot of people do want to eat at home. I often think to myself, oh gosh, I would love to get some beautiful takeout and bring it home. I'm having friends over for dinner. I want to be able to provide something nice. I don't necessarily have the time, I do now, to create a nice meal. But the options for nice takeout were extremely limited. If you wanted to eat well, you had to either cook it yourself, or you had to go to a restaurant and pay a higher premium, which would barely cover the overhead of the restaurant anyways, and to be able to drink some of these wines. The other change that we're seeing too is that with our restaurant license, as long as people buy food, we are able to sell wine. So a lot of these private imports that you're not able to find at the SAC, you can order them through the agents. You do have to buy a full case, except for recently, they've announced that you can buy mixed cases of wine. So you can have 4 different and 3 times 4 different labels in a bottle, but you still have to buy a case of wine. So at Grumman, what we're able to do is bring in some stuff that you won't necessarily see at the SAQ. We mark it up just a little bit, again, to help cover the costs, but we have some of the lowest, if not the lowest, prices in the city on some of these wines. A lot of my wines are, anywhere from $10 to $30 or $40 cheaper than at some of our competitors, which is really gratifying to see. The only way for me to do that, though, is for me to do volume. So I need to be serving more people. So you would think, well, if you're going to be serving more people, you're going to be encouraging more people to be coming into the restaurant, and then there's not going to be social distancing, and then there's going to be the lineups. One of the things that we have always been good at Grumman is being efficient. So because people are able to order online, everything is already packaged, so a client is in the restaurant for less than a minute. So we are able to do volume and keep the social distancing because of our efficiency, which is really nice too.
Yeah, that's excellent. I live across town, which is I keep salivating over the menu, and then I keep seeing these new things, and I've posted it a few times, but I'll have to make that huge trek from the plateau over to you very soon.
But we're not doing fancy food either. Like, we're really
No, I
not
know.
trying to recreate a restaurant experience at home. It's very, very family friendly, very kid friendly, comforting, lasagnas
I
and
love
taco
your food.
kits. And
No, I will definitely do it. I think honestly, it's taken time, and I don't know about other people, but for me, it's taken a little bit of time to leave my bubble. It's like I didn't touch my car for how long, and now I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to do this for a long time, first of all, let's have some joy. And so if we can have moments where we do order, and also let's support restaurants and people. I mean, this is one nice thing, is the reminder that it's not just, you're doing something nice for yourself, but we do some things. Events are always called Eat and Do Good. We did one with you guys, Mange et Do Good, for the women's shelter passages. And really right now is a time of Mange et Do Good. Like, that is, you are doing good. So I have a last question for you. What do you want to say to your community, or to Montreal as a whole? It's up to you. Is there anything that you'd like to say and leave them with?
just that it's important for us to be there for you. I think that one of the things that we're really proud about at Grumman is that we offer excellent value for money, and we want to take care of people. Gail and Seb and I have always enjoyed feeding people. I mean, first and foremost, the job of a restaurateur is to make someone feel comfortable and satiated, and to offer them value for money. We work really hard to make sure that our dishes are seasoned well, are presented in an appealing fashion, and that are affordable. Our goal here is not to make a ton of money. It's to pay ourselves a living wage, to pay our bills, which are substantial, to be able to offer employment to some of our citizens in a safe environment as well. So what I want to say to Montrealers is, we're here for you. We're here to feed you really tasty, reasonably priced food. We have your private import wines at probably the lowest markup in the city, and that we've rehired some of the people that we unfortunately needed to lay off, and that we're safe and healthy.
I'm so glad. No, it's really good to see. And I think I find, even that you said we just want to take care of you, this is a shift that I've seen that I love, and I'll end on this, but that I've noticed that this language that used to be so intimate and that was reserved only for people who were really close to us is becoming a much more public way of speaking. Whether I was standing in the lineup at Home Depot the other day outside, not my happiest moment, it was freezing, and at each interval they had des pancartes that said, take care of each other, prenons soin les uns des autres. And I thought they could have written that so differently. And here they are writing in this very warm way. And I'm standing outside, the construction bay at the Home Depot. So hopefully that'll be one of our leftovers, is that we continue to have this, a gentleness as a society, and also a heightened awareness, like the same heightened awareness that we have about everything we touch, that we keep it about the incredible inequalities and the different ways that people are living this.
Well, I think compassion has become cool, finally. So it's a really nice change. And I agree with you. I hope we're able to keep it up. We have such short memories, right?
I love it. Thank you so much, Hilary. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you sharing what's inside your head and how you guys have made things work. I'm so impressed with it. And I will write to you and let you know how and where you will find this. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for your interest in Grumman. We're really proud of what we're doing. We're working hard to make sure that everyone is safe and that we're able to put out a quality product. It's really nice for us. So thank you for your interest in Grumman.
Of course, you guys are one of the best places in Montreal, and an ally if we do something when we're still doing our Eat and Do Goods. The days will come again.
Say, we belong to each other. We have to take care.
Yeah. Thanks, Hilary. Have a beautiful day.
You too, Sophie.
Bye.
Bye.